Yes,
Is
ma'am.
my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay. So I'm not going full screen right now because I am showing you just the key slides. Okay, all right. So this is one slide for packet switching where basically the data that you are going to send is first divided into chunks which are known as packets. Okay, so then you send these chunks over to the medium. The medium can have any amount of system capacity or any amount of bandwidth that is given to it. So that is RBPS. It is given in this diagram. So if your packet length is L and your data rate that is given out, or the system capacity or sorry, the link capacity of the link is RBPS, that is bits per second, then the total amount of time for transmission will be given by L by R. Okay, so you send packets one by one over to the medium. Now packet switching works on the principle of store and forward, where an entire packet must arrive to an intermediate node fully before it can be transmitted onto the next link. Okay, so this is the concept of store and forward. um, Now in this case you can see that there is a source and there is a destination, and in between there's a router. Okay, so there are three packets that are to be sent from the source to the destination. 1, 2 and 3, they are named as that, and then these packets are arriving at this router in between, the intermediate router. So suppose packet number 1 is arriving at this intermediate router. It will start transmitting in the next link only after the entire packet has reached the router. Okay, so this is what store and forward switching is. So the packet switching principle is based on store and forward. Okay, now if you ignore all other delays here, as I told you that the transmission delay here will be basically L by R. So if you ignore all other delays and only consider the transmission delay, then it will take twice of L by R time to reach from the source to the destination. Okay, so this is what packet switching is. Now one more important point for packet switching is that because uh, let me just get back to the okay. Now because we are sending data in packets, and there is no reservation of resources. So that means what I said is that whenever there is a packet, or sorry, whenever there is a data to be sent, then we have to basically, it is sent as per the requirement. Okay, so if there is a burst of data, then also whatever resource is available, these are bits per second, that is the only resource that is available. So accordingly, according to that speed, the data will be sent. Okay, so what will happen if there are so many packets which are arriving at a particular router, and the outgoing link only has RBPS link capacity? So the packets will actually, the transmission of the packets will actually slow down, right? So then what the router has to do, it has to store these packets in them so that the packets are not lost, or they can wait until they get a chance to get transmitted. Okay, so this basically forms a queue which leads to queuing delay, which you all know. So with packet switching, we will have this issue of queuing delay, which may lead to packet loss and even increased delay in delivery of packets. Okay, so this is one other issue that we have in case of packet switching. Now, whether we will have queuing delay in case of circuit switching or not, that you have to think. Okay, and I will ask you the question later on. So you know that we have four different sources of packet delay for any packet when it is being transmitted via packet switching. So we have processing delay at the nodes, we have queuing delay, we have transmission delay, and we have propagation delay. Okay, so processing delay is basically, at the node while checking your bit errors, while finding out which output link will be there. So that is the delay incurred, and that is known as the processing delay. Queuing delay, we have already seen that it is the time for which a packet waits until it gets a chance to transmit itself over to the output link. Okay, and of course, as congestion will increase, the queuing delay will also increase. So it is dependent on the congestion level of the router. Then what we have is transmission delay. We have also seen that transmission delay is basically calculated with the help of, what is the length of the packet that you are sending and what is the link capacity that you are having, you are getting from the link. So L is the length of the packet, R is the link bandwidth. So that is given by L by R. And finally, we have propagation delay. And propagation delay, you all know that it is given by D by S. That means D representing length of the physical link and S representing the propagation speed of the medium, which is approximately 2 into 10 power 8 meters per second here when it is considered as a wired link. Okay, so we have these 4 delays, and please ensure that, or please note that transmission delay and propagation delay are two very different things. Please do not confuse between the two. Okay, so now this is packet switching, and then let me get to very quickly to circuit switching. So circuit switching, as Devanshu just suggested, that it is basically switching technique where resources are pre-allocated before the communication can happen, right? So basically end-to-end resources are allocated, or basically resources are reserved for a call between the source and a destination. It basically mimics what happens in a telephone network. Okay, so we will also get into what happens in a telephone network in this course. So whenever there is a call that is to be made, or in the sense whenever there is a communication that is to be made between a source and a destination, first the resources need to be set up. So there has to be a setup phase where the resources will be reserved between the source and the destination. Once that is done, then the communication will happen, and after the communication is done, then the resources will be released. Okay. So good thing about this is that nobody has to wait for anybody else, because the resources are already reserved and they can transmit the data between the source and the destination. But the problem is that suppose you reserve the resources for the call, and suddenly due to some issues the call got dropped from one of the sides. Okay, so the resources have been reserved for a particular amount of time, right? So for that time, those resources are going to be idle. Okay, so that is a wastage of resources. So we basically, an efficient usage of resources is not going to happen in this case. All right, so this is what circuit switching is. Now I had ended my class here in the last class, so I will just start from here. Okay, so in packet switching, as we all know, that resources are not reserved and they're used as per the demand that is coming. That is, if the traffic is bursty, then more usage of resources will be there. If the traffic is non-bursty, then less usage will be there. And then whenever there is a packet, there are so many packets which are getting transmitted, so they have to wait for an access to a communication link, because they are sharing the communication link. Okay, so also in packet switching, it allows more users to use the network because of sharing of the resources, obviously. Okay, so some of the advantages that packet switching gives over circuit switching is that it gives better sharing of bandwidth. It is pretty simple and efficient, and also it is less costly. So you might think that packet switching is the best, and why should we even think of circuit switching? This question might come to you. So Can anybody ask, can anybody tell me the answer to this question? That if packet switching has so many advantages over circuit switching, then why should we even think of circuit switching? We should all use packet switching only. So can somebody answer this question?
Hello, ma'am. Reliability of data.
Sorry, can you repeat what you said?
Ma'am, reliability of data.
Reliability. Okay. What is your name, please?
Surbi.
Surabhi, you are from MTech or BTech?
MTech.
MTech. Okay. What do you mean when you say reliability of data? In what sense you are saying reliability?
In circuit switching, data loss will be less, but in the packet switching, data loss will be more because we don't have a dedicated path.
Okay, agreed. Anything else by anybody else?
Ma'am, I'm Vanshita, MTech CSE.
Okay.
Ma'am, if there is a lot of data, like bursty data we want to share, then circuit switching would be better. Like for example, if we think of Google and all, they take a dedicated link for transferring data.
You're saying that for bursty data, circuit switching will be good?
Yes, for large amount of data, because we don't have to like the single packet will be showing the path and rest would be just going forward. Whereas in packet switching, every time we have to have a store and forward technique.
That is true, but then in this case, you must be assuming that the burst is coming from only one resource, isn't it?
Yes, so
Oh,
from the source.
only
source.
one source. Yes. If there
Ma'am,
are several sources, yes, please.
ma'am, in order delivery of packets.
That will be there in circuit switching, yes. Okay. No, what I was trying to say is that if there are several sources which are trying to send bursty data, in that case, will circuit switching be a good idea?
No, ma'am.
Yes, because so many sources are trying to send bursty data. In that case, I mean, you have to actually dedicate the resources for and a particular amount of time, and then when we say bursty data, it means that sometimes it is sending less, sometimes it is sending a very huge amount of data. Okay, so even if you dedicate the resource for some time, it might happen that for that much amount of time, the number of packets that are getting sent is less. However, if you know that only these are the sources from which bursty data might come, then you can dedicate that resource. That will be a good idea. Okay, so let me just go ahead. All right, so this is what we are talking about. Anyway, so let me just show you the advantages of circuit switching. So first of all, uh, one more important point that we have in packet switching is that we do have a packet header in order to know that what is the source, what is the destination, and some more information about the packet itself. Whereas in circuit switching, there is no need to have a large header for packets. Okay, we do not need so much information during circuit switching, right? So that is why the header size decreases, and with that you can actually put a lot of payload in that, and of course more data can be transmitted, and even the overhead will be less, header overhead. So that is an advantage of circuit switching. Then of course every circuit has dedicated resources allocated to it. Now because dedicated resources are allocated, your QoS will be guaranteed. Okay, and this is one important point that I want all of you to take note of, that is the end-to-end delay in case of circuit switching will consist of propagation delay plus transmission delay, assuming that processing delay is basically happening at the node. We are not considering the processing delay much here. So the main delays that you will get from end-to-end delay is propagation delay and transmission delay, and no queuing delay. Okay, why? Because no data is basically waiting for another one to finish it or finish its transmission. You have dedicated resource. Whenever there is data to be sent, you are already having the resource, so simply send it. So there is no queuing delay in case of circuit switching, which is an advantage over packet switching. Okay, so if your queuing delay is 0 in this case, and your transmission delay and propagation delay are basically constant. So if you are considering that packet size is not variable, okay, propagation delay is anyways going to be d by s. And if your packet size is same, that is L is fixed, R is fixed, so these two terms are basically fixed. So your end-to-end delay, what you will get is also fixed, right? So if you are not having queuing delay, in this case, you will get fixed end-to-end delay, or your end-to-end delay will not be variable, assuming that the packet size is not variable. Okay, so here anyways in see, whenever I'm saying packet sizes and all that, see, circuit switching is does not divide the data into packets. I'm just referring the data as a packet here. So please do not confuse that. It is just that you are sending the data over the medium, over circuit switching. So the transmission delay will not be a variable. The propagation delay will also not be variable. So there will not be any queuing delay in this case. Okay, so your end-to-end delay will not be variable. Basically, that is the case. Okay, now the confusion that happens sometimes is that we generally refer in networks about any data that we are sending. We generally say that it is being sent as a packet, assuming that everything is being sent over packet switching. But please do not confuse with that. In circuit switching, we are not dividing the data into chunks of packets. Okay, so however you are sending the data, it gets delivered in order, and of course the lookup time in the forwarding table would be very small in case of circuit switching. Okay, so these are the advantages of circuit switching that we have. Okay, disadvantages and all we have already studied, so I'll not get much into this part. Let me just get to the next part of it. Okay, we have already studied this. I will anyway share the slides with you. So let me get to the part where we actually want to see that what is next. All right, so this is actually not next. This is what used to be done earlier, that is message switching. Okay, so the scientific community basically thought of that if we are having such kind of a network that is packet switching, we do have its own advantages and disadvantages, and when we are using circuit switching, we have its own advantages and disadvantages. So can we do something better than these two? Okay, so message switching was basically an alternate to circuit switching. Okay, what was being done there, that end users basically communicate by sending and receiving messages. That is, they are basically sending the entire data that needs to be shared. Okay, now how are they sending? They are sending it using some small data unit that is known as a message. Okay, so they are considering messages as the smallest individual unit, and they are transferring it over to the medium. Okay, now sender and receiver, they are not directly connected, and the intermediate nodes basically transfer data using store and forward switching technique. Okay, so this ensures that the data will be delivered at the end of the day. Okay, so let us see how it works. All right, so basically let me show you here what happens. So here terminal 1 and terminal 2, they want to communicate. So what are they doing? They are sending the data as messages, messages being the smallest individual unit. And how is this happening? These messages are being transmitted over to the medium using store and forward switching technique. In this core switch network, the data is being transferred over to different links and then finally transferred to the final destination. Okay, so basically here the message is the key part, where the message will be, see, they are saying that message is the smallest individual unit, but the network administrator can choose the size of the message. Okay, so sometimes what happens, he can choose a larger message size. Sometimes a smaller message size can be chosen also. If the message size is pretty large, then the store and forward switching is going to create an issue, right? You have to wait until the entire data comes to the particular switch and then only you can transfer. So that incurs a lot of delay in this case. So what will happen in this case? The good things about message switching is that it will enable efficient usage of network resources, and the data channels will be shared in this case. Okay, and since you are using store and forward switching technique, the traffic can be regulated easily. Okay, but the problem that will be there is that yeah, as I mentioned, that since we are using the concept of messages here, the switches will require a large storage capacity because the message size is determined by the network administrator, right? So the switch storage capacity might have to be increased. Okay, because message has to be stored until it is forwarded further, and of course if it does not get the link, then it has to be stored indefinitely at the intermediate node, right? Actually the word will not be indefinitely, it will be until for a long time, until the message is actually dropped. Okay, so this will be one problem, and with this problem what will happen, that the delay will increase and it cannot be used for real-time applications. Okay, so these are the issues that we have with message switching. Now given these issues, what the scientific community thought is that, can we have a combination of packet and circuit switching? Can we do something which has the best of both worlds? So with this, the concept of virtual circuit switching came into picture. I'm sure that all the students all the BTech students who took my computer networks course, I think you all are aware of the virtual circuit switching. BTech students, can you answer this question? You have read about virtual circuit switching, right, in the computer networks course? Yes, BTechs, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so has this has been done in your course, right? Virtual circuit switching?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so can anybody just give a brief, just a brief idea of what virtual circuit switching is?
Ma'am, source creates a temporary connection to the destination
How?
using protocols.
That is okay. It creates a temporary connection, and there's something. There's
Ma'am,
one more thing which is very interesting in this.
every link is given a special identifier, and in the forwarding table of every router, for like while the call is being set up, we write down the input link and the corresponding output link for that particular virtual circuit. So as long as the call is established, we use only that. Like for every input, we have a particular output router.
Hmm. True. So that's what virtual circuit switching is. So basically, as it is given here in the first point, so it is defined as a means of transporting data over a packet switched computer network in such a way that it appears to be a dedicated physical layer link. Okay, so basically you are transmitting data over a packet switched medium only, over a packet switched network only, but you are transferring it in such a way that it looks like it is a circuit switched network. That means you have dedicated resources for it. That's what virtual circuit switching is. So from the name itself, you can guess that a virtual circuit switching technique, right? So this uses the concept of virtual circuit. So we will see what the concept of virtual circuit is. Okay, and it is also known as a connection oriented model. Okay, so what is done is that because we are setting up the virtual circuit, we need to set up the call first, and then we need to release the resources. So these are some steps that are taken. We will see what happens in these steps. But first, let us see that what a virtual circuit consists of. Okay, so a virtual circuit consists of a path from a source to a given destination, and each link, okay, each link between between two particular nodes is given a virtual circuit number or an identifier. Okay, so what used to happen in case of packet switching, that you have a particular node in between. So now you first check the IP address, and then accordingly you check in the forwarding table that okay, what should be the corresponding output port, and accordingly you send or you forward the packet to that particular output port. Okay, but the problem is that you are basically spending a lot of time in checking the entire IP address, right? So what's happening here is that instead of putting all of those things in order to reduce the time, you basically put an identifier over all the links. Okay, now the catch is here that how will these links basically share, or basically the nodes will share that this link should be numbered as this, the other link should be numbered as that. So how is all of this information shared with all the other nodes? Okay, now for that reason we have this setup phase, and finally the communication happens. Okay, now the third point is that the entries in the forwarding table in each switch along the path, they need to be filled, okay, with this identifier and all that, so that you get to know that if a packet is coming from this link, then it has to be forwarded to this other link depending upon what is the identifier. Okay, so let me get to this part. All right, so some few more points that we need to know, that a packet in a virtual circuit has a virtual circuit number in its header. So it is identified by this number. Then we have that of course, if each packet is having different VC number in its header, so therefore we will have different VC numbers for each link in the entire virtual circuit. Right, now the link or sorry, the VC identifier for one link, that is the incoming link, and the outgoing link may differ, right? It will be different. So then what will the forwarding switch do? The switch which is in between, the task for that switch will be that it has to replace that VC number for that particular packet which it is forwarding to that to other particular link. Okay, now let me just I will get into the diagram to show you that how it works. Okay, for the time being, let's just see what are the points or what are the key points that we need to first know. Okay, then the next part is that all packets that belong to the same source and destination travel the same path, but the packets may arrive at the destination with different delays if the resource allocation is on demand. Okay, so here's one thing. So please remember that we are basically working on a packet switched network. We are trying to create a virtual circuit over it, right? So that means if there is a lot of burst of data that is coming, your path might get changed, right, depending upon whether the other path is actually available or not. Okay, so this gives you a little more flexibility rather than what was happening earlier. Okay, if you were having a circuit switched network earlier, then the path would have been fixed for this, for a particular transmission, okay, whether it is bursty or non-bursty. But in this case, if it is a bursty traffic and it's coming from several sources, you can actually change, or you can actually allocate the resources on demand. Okay, so this will give you different delays at the end. Now the last point is that switching at the data link layer or DLL in a switched WAN is normally implemented using virtual circuit techniques. Okay, this is just an implementation related information. So let's see how it works. Okay, so this is basically a virtual circuit network that is given here. You have several end systems and these are the corresponding switches to which they are connected to. Okay, now how it will work. So if there is a data that is if there is a packet with some data coming towards a particular switch, it has a particular identifier, a virtual circuit identifier. So here at this point it is 14 in this diagram. Now what we just studied, that the task of the forwarding table in the switch is that it has to replace this identifier to the identifier of the next link to which it will be forwarded to, right? So if this packet needs to be forwarded over this particular link, the switch has to know that what is the identifier or VCI for this particular link. So after knowing that, what it will do is it will basically replace this value of 14 of this packet to 77 because it has to be sent over this link. Okay, so this is what happens in VCI. Now let's see how the forwarding table in a VC switch looks like. Okay, so see, we have data packets with different VCIs which are incoming over this link 1 of this particular switch. It has two other links, that is link 2 and link 3, and this is the forwarding table. So please look at forwarding table here. So at port 1 we have two packets which are arriving with identifiers 14 and 77. Port 1's packet is to be forwarded to port 3. Okay, and the corresponding VCI is basically 22. So whenever this packet is arriving, that is packet with VCI 14, its VCI has to be replaced with 22 and then it has to be transferred over link 3. So that is what's happening here. Then again, this another packet arrives at this switch over link 1 and it has a VCI of 77. So given this VCI from the forwarding table, you can see that okay, with this VCI it has to be forwarded via output port link 2. Now when it is to be forwarded to output port link 2, what should be the corresponding VCI? That is given in this forwarding table, that is 41. So now what the switch will do, it will replace the value 77 from the packet, it will replace it with 41 and then it will transfer it over this link 2. Okay, so this is the basic concept and this is how the forwarding table works in a VC switch. Now let's see how the source and source to destination data transfer occurs in case of VC switching. So we have a source A here which is sending data over this link with a VCI of 14. Okay, it reaches the switch. This is the corresponding forwarding table of the switch. So we have this information already in this switch. Now, okay, it does have the phases which I told you about. First, let us see how the data transfer happens. Then we will see that how this information of the VCI numbers are going to each and every switch. Okay, so let us first assume that this information is already available to the switch. So what information is available to this switch? That port 1, if the VCI is 14, that means it has to be forwarded to port 3. But if it is to be forwarded to port 3, what should be the corresponding VCI? That is 66. So whenever the data is arriving at this switch over link 1, you check the forwarding table and then the switch replaces the VCI to 66 as you can see and forwards it over this link 3. Okay, then it reaches another switch. There you have again a forwarding table and there you know that the information is already there that if a packet arrives at port 1 with VCI 66, then it has to go out from port 2 with a VCI of 22. Okay, so then 66 will be replaced by 22 in this packet and then you transfer it over the particular port 2. Again, it reaches another switch here where it reaches over its port 2 and you check in its forwarding table here, it is given that if any packet arrives at port 2 with VCI 22, then it has to be forwarded over port 3. Now, what is the corresponding VCI? That is 77. It is already there, this information. So 22 will be replaced by 77 in the packet's header, and then it will be forwarded to the destination. Okay, so this is how the source to destination data transfer occurs. Now the question that is remaining still is that how do these switches get to know that what should be the VCI for the particular link? How do they get this information? Okay, so we will see how this happens. So this happens with phases. Okay, so so basically the nodes or the switches, they exchange information in different phases. Okay, so the first phase is known as the VC setup phase or the virtual circuit setup phase. At this phase only, this information, these, what should be the VCI for this link, what should be the VCI for the other link, those information are exchanged. That is the setup phase. Once the setup phase is done, then the data transfer phase happens. We have already seen how the data transfer happens, and then finally, once the data transfer is done, you tear down that basic circuit that you have made. Okay, so that is the VC tear down phase, and in which what happens is the sender informs the network layer that this circuit needs to be terminated. Okay, so this is what the three phases of the virtual circuit are. Okay, so once this tear down information is given, the network layer informs the end system on the other side that call is to be terminated, and the forwarding tables, corresponding forwarding tables in the path, they are updated. Okay, so now let us see how a setup requests in a VC network works. So let us see here. Okay, so these are the information that are being sent from each node to the other, that if there is some information that needs to be sent, then it has to be given with this VCI. Okay, how is this being sent? So there has to be a call from A to B. That is, A is here, that is a source, and B is here, that is, it is another destination. Okay, so this is a setup request that goes from A to B. Okay, so this is a call setup request that goes that, okay, first you find out the path, right, in any network. So this, you just found out that, okay, in between, when you are setting up the request, first time when you are requesting that, okay, a path needs to be made between A and B. Okay, so you first find out that, okay, what are the intermediate switches in between? All right, so these are basically the switches that are there in between. With this information comes to everybody that, okay, if there is something that is incoming, okay, from A, the incoming is basically 14, VCI 14. So that information is sent to this switch number 1. Similarly, from switch number 1 to switch number 2, when this information is going, that, there is to be a call set up, and it is coming via port 1. So then the VCI is basically going to be 66. So like that, this information is propagated. All right, so now what happens? Now once this information reaches B, then B again sends back an acknowledgement that, okay, if there is a call set up, now let us again give out the VCI values to the corresponding intermediate switches. Okay, so B informs its nearest switch, okay, the port with which it is connected to, that if there is any packet that is to arrive via this link, then the VCI has to be 77. Switch 3 gets this information and updates its forwarding table. Okay, similarly, when switch 3 sends this acknowledgement packet, again, what does it send? It sends the corresponding switch here that, if you are sending any packet, please send with VCI 22, because it will reach via this port. Okay, we have already seen in the first time when the data was sent, okay, in the requesting packet, we have seen that, okay, it will reach via port 2 with a VCI of 22. So therefore, it informs this switch that if you have any packet which has to be sent over your port 2, then please replace it with a VCI of 22. Okay, so this is how this information is exchanged, and they basically populate the forwarding table, the intermediate switches. All right, so after this population of the forwarding table, only after that the call happens or the communication happens. Once the communication is done, then we have a tear down phase. In the tear down phase, what will happen? That is, after sending all the frames to the destination, then a tear down request frame will be sent from the sources side. Okay, once this request frame is received at the destination side, then the destination will again respond with a confirmation frame, tear down confirmation frame, and accordingly all the forwarding tables, they will be updated that okay, fine, now this tear down has happened, we need not have this information anymore. Okay, so this is how a VC circuit basically works. So a virtual circuit does have two kinds of scope. One is link local scope, which is having significance only on the given link, and another is that they are uniquely defined, that virtual circuit identifier that you are having, that can be a uniquely defined virtual connection. Okay, so which one would you be using? That depends on what is the kind of circuit that you are having. Okay, so virtual circuits can be basically established before the circuit is needed or on demand. All right, so let us see what the this is basically summary of the virtual circuit. That is, we have already studied that each packet has a VC identifier. We have call setup and tear down phases, and every router on each destination maintains the state for each passing connection. How does it maintain a state? By having the information in the forwarding table, right? And basically we are virtually allocating resources between the source and the destination, making it a virtually circuit switched network. Okay, this is the summary, but then again we do have two types of virtual circuit switching techniques. I want to take it up, but we do not have any further time for this class today. So in the next class, I will take up the rest of the virtual circuit switching part, and also we will get into ATMs after this. Okay, so much more interesting topics are going to come in your way. So any questions on whatever has been taught today?